It is.
I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony. I'd like to welcome everybody to Friday Night Big Book Study Workshop with the program of recovery laid out by the first 100 men and women. How we open this meeting is with Serenity Prayer.
Yes, please. Gotta get Joe in there. She's gonna shoulder you.
What do we need for a good meeting? God. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay. Usually when we do the prayer, that means we're starting the meeting. If you still have something that you feel is that important to say, you can go finish your conversation outside. So one of the things is tonight we're going to really tune it up a bit, right? Usually I have somebody sitting in with me, but there's a lot of people coming back, and there's a lot of tragedy happening in the fellowship and with people around us. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to lay this out in the most simplest form. And if you haven't been able to get sober, right, or your sobriety isn't what you hoped it is or it could be, I'm going to explain the recipe in a detailed manner that it's the same for all of us. What's happening is like, first of all, I am a recovered alcoholic. My sobriety date is April 8, 1989. My first introduction to AA was in 1978. So that means I'm coming up to 42 years in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Somebody 12-stepped me into a workshop like this a little over 30 years ago. But I didn't go thinking they were going to help me. What they did was they asked me to go help them. I was going to that workshop thinking I was going to go help them, and what they did was save my life. They told me things that I wasn't really thrilled about, and I wasn't really happy with these guys who saved my life. By the end of this meeting, a lot of you people aren't going to be thrilled with what I have to say either, but it just might save your life, right? How many people here has relapsed? It's kind of baffling when you look at it, right? Like if you hold up your hand for a second, how many people here has relapsed? Take a look around at the numbers. It's staggering, considering that there is a solution for alcoholism. There's something here that's called the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's being missed. Why is it being missed? Like something is falling through the wayside here, like we're missing the message or the essence of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? What happens is becoming too singular instead of collective, right? And this is our basic text, right? This is our manual. This is our travel package, right? Like it's like meetings are like coming to an airport. If you don't have a ticket, you're the only one not going somewhere, right? Like you could go to the airport for 90 days, for an hour at a time. Nothing's going to change, but you're going to meet some great people, right? And after a while, if you're a really good alcoholic, you start getting resentful at these people, right? Because they're the only ones going somewhere, coming from somewhere. So what happens is, because any chameleons in the room, and we don't know we do it. So what happens is we like to blend in, right? Anybody ever go to a new bar, you assess how they are, and then you fit in. You try to go unnoticed. Unless you had too much to drink, then you're very noticed. right? I was joking with Joe. It's like one of the symptoms of alcoholism should be 911. How many people has been 911 here? How many people are really joy to the family events when drinking? How many people families and friends are looking forward to your next relapse? If you were to go home and do an assessment with your family, friends, kids, loved ones, and asked, how would you feel if I started drinking again? How do you think they'd feel? So the biggest problem with our illness is we're the only ones that really don't comprehend the severity of it. And why that is because we come conditioned to our condition. Our lives, how many people was in junior kindergarten and hoped to end up where they ended up? Like, you could scratch that off the bucket list. Like, you know, I fulfilled all my dreams and aspirations. I got my life just where I wanted. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's really baffling. And what happens is a lot of us start treating this like a behavioral problem instead of an illness. And it catches on. So when there's more people who haven't done this, compared to those who have done it, who sounds like they're doing it the correct way? Is the majority. So a new person comes in here and listens to the majority, and they're trying to do what they did, and they're baffled at the idea that they can't stay sober. And then they get a bit of time. Anybody ever get a bit of time here? Like a couple weeks, couple months? That's a lot of time for some of us, right? That means including weekends. I'm sorry, like I got to throw that out there, right? Including weekends. Like get some time in. And then you relapse. And if you have the kind of mind we have, you think that you were successful of abstaining for 2 or 3 months or 2 weeks. You think you've accomplished something by not drinking in that short period of time. Anybody like that? You think, I had this much time before, I should be able to do that again. Well, if you're looking for the same experience, then you should, if you're doing what you did the last time, wouldn't you end up getting what you got? But we don't think that. We think we're successful because a lot of us really, this is where we kind of, most people in our fellowship have not done step one. Really done step one. They mimic it, they mouth it, but they don't understand it. Right? So if we were to go through here right now and go to people, show me step, maybe in this group would be a little better, but everybody coming back, if you were to go, show me step one on how to do it and where you get the information from. Most people wouldn't be able to show you that. What they give you is a generic answer, right? Generic bumper sticker sobriety, it's called, right? I was like that. Remember, I was in and out for 11 years. I had no idea what I was up against. So it made sense to me by the reassuring of self that I should be able to do this based on my experience because I did not want to drink again. When I came out here in 87, right? I was 25 years old. I'm puking green bile. I'm dying of alcoholism. I was at a home group for 5 years previous to that in Toronto. My dry date was in Pencil. Dying of alcoholism and Alcoholics Anonymous. And everybody that put their hand up, you are dying of alcoholism and Alcoholics Anonymous, but you don't know it because we don't understand what we're up against, right? Because we get taught, we get all these ideas, and we bring things down to the simplest form that it's not the way it's intended. It's like when we bring up topics and we talk about acceptance. Where does that idea come from, acceptance? Most people say the stories, but that's not where it comes from. It comes from the Serenity Prayer. It's the most powerful prayer that we have as newcomers to incorporate within our lives. But it's the least talked about. Prayer is the least talked about. What we talk about now is triggers, avoidance, meetings makers make it, just don't pick up, my problems after. This is not endorsed by the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you have that kind of thinking, you've already defeated yourself without realizing it. You've already in a collision course with another experience that you just finished. How do you know what the future looks like is you look at your past. But you wouldn't know that because based on, you hear people say, well, you know what I mean, if you hit bottom. How many people has hit bottom here and then found another bottom? Yeah. And then found another bottom. Then when you thought you couldn't hit any more farther bottoms, you're on the pavement, you're down on it, then you hit the sewer system. Like there's a bottom to a bottom to a bottom. Anybody know what a bottom is for a real alcoholic? It's a toe tag. So when they put this together, and you kind of understand what it is, then you would approach it a lot differently. So, how many people came in here broke and destitute? Broke, totally broke, not a pot to piss in. And then if you came here and they said, hey, you know what, we were like that, and now we're all millionaires. We got that through doing this recipe. It'll allow you to be a multi-millionaire. How much would you be studying this? You'd be knocking, are you going to be in there long? Wait, I'm just reading one more page. You're in the shitter reading it. Wouldn't you? If this guaranteed you'd be a millionaire, how many people said, oh, wait a minute, be studying this thing? Like, but we go, oh, your life depends on, okay, I'll get to it tomorrow. Like, we're not right in the, and if you don't think that if you think you're kind of okay up there, ask the people that know you. Got quiet, right? How many people have been really concerned for you long before you were concerned for you? How many people's relapsed here more than a couple times? How do you explain that to people around you? Because you don't know what you're up against, right? So when this thing was put together, if you have your book, it's kind of interesting. They talk about here, right in the beginning of this, Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. So right away, and part of this thing, and part of step 12 is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. We try to carry this message and to practice these principles. So those who've had this experience, whose job is it to carry this message? Our job. But because there's more new people than people who have done this, we tell you to go find it. You wouldn't be able to find your ass with both hands. That's what what are you looking for? Like, I'm 11 years in and out. I don't know what the hell any of this is until somebody 12-stepped me. When this guy 12-stepped me, he had the collective experience of doing this. George was dying of alcoholism in AA. I used to look at him, feel better about my head. A red nose and the veins were popping. He would shake. He had psoriasis. And I look at him and go, boy, if I ever get that bad, I'm puking green bile. I can't keep nothing down. I haven't had a solid stool in years. Like, I'm sick. I am dying. My liver's popping out. Like, I went for physical at 16 years sober, and they did they said, hey, you should quit drinking. There's something the matter with your liver. I'm like, I got liver damage, I got internal damage, and by the end of the meeting, you realize I have some psychological damage too, right? But I'm on the right side of crazy, right? So here they talk about the story. Most people would say, oh, the recovered part, but it's actually the story. If you understood the story, you'd be able to go, you know what? I have this same story, the inability to get sober. But I don't realize the severity of my situation is because I'm conditioned to it. Right? And so why I guess I'm a little more fired up today is yesterday I went to my buddy's memorial of life. He's been in the fellowship 12 years. He got 4.5 years. Life was fantastic. Phenomenal. Married, kid, 3-year-old kid on the back. Life's fantastic. His own career, job, new truck, new everything, traveling, pictures on Facebook. Life's fantastic. Right? The severity and the desperateness started to subside because he never really understood and did step 1. Right? He went through treatment, he got the behavioral modification thing, and when he relapsed, he was under the impression that he can go back and obtain those 4.5 years again. It's just a matter of getting back and just exerting myself more. Anybody under that impression? When you have that idea, you really don't understand what you're up against, right? And so what happens is when you come to AA, you hear people say, I've done step 1 before I got here. You may have been suffering from step 1 before you got here, but in order to do step 1, you need to understand it. To concede to something, you need to understand what it is you're conceding to. You need to look at the evidence and say, yes, it's like a self-conviction, where you're the kind of prosecutor, lawyer, and judge. You look at all the evidence being presented and said, yes, I have this thing. I'm in deep trouble. So if you have this condition, the outcome is to be doomed to an alcoholic death. It didn't say when. And the troubling factor about our illness, and we really don't understand, is a lot of us can stay sober for months or years given good reason. I stayed sober, absent of alcohol, for 16 months once. I nearly killed a guy, one of my best friends, in a blackout in a fight. I woke up in the morning and I grabbed what was left of the 40-ouncer. I went in. He was lying on the floor in my kitchen. There was blood on one side, vomit on the other. And I kicked him. I said, get up, pup, let's get going. And then I had a moment of clarity. Anybody ever have a moment of clarity here? Where the blinders of your life is removed and you see yourself as you are for that brief moment. And you have 2 alternatives at that moment, is to seek help because you can't really stand what you're seeing, or to have another drink and hope it goes away. How many people has taken another drink and that feeling and that emotion and that situation has gone away, and you need to wait for another window or another opportunity? Because what happens is the condition we live in becomes acceptable to us, and we have brief moments where we come to and go, man, something's got to change. right? And that's why most of us are here. We've had that moment, something's got to change. How many people's had that moment here? And did you notice that something came from inside of you that said to you, what's the matter with you? What are you doing? How many people's had that conversation? You ever wonder who's saying that to you? And then you put out that desperateness, that they call it the act of desperation, is you cry out to something that you want to do anything to change your life. You have that incomprehensible, pitiful demoralization. Anybody been there? You're sitting there and you're crippled by the pain that's happening inside of you. How many people's had that? Where you have the anxiety, you can hardly breathe, and you can't believe where you are, what you've done, and what's going on. And you do anything to change that, right? That's the story of alcoholism. But we don't know what's gearing us, because that's not my hopes and dreams for me. My dreams and hopes is in conflict with what's happening. I would try to steer away from that. I'd get promising careers. I've had the best jobs, Westinghouse, I've had in the Army, top of my field, and everything I've done, overachiever. Any overachievers here? Then I found myself drinking again, and those opportunities would vanish, and I wouldn't be able to see why. So my first meeting, I was 16, and it wasn't until I was 27 when somebody introduced me to the story of Alcoholics Anonymous. You hear a lot of people say, oh, we're miracles. You're not the miracle, you're a shit show. But if you'd like to become a part of the miracle, we have a course of action that will enable you to do that. It's enabling us to find a new story that we could have never achieved on our own. It's the story of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what they put in this text. It starts off with saying is there's hope here, but you need to understand the story. Most people don't understand the story because we have this problem that's called self-centeredness. Nobody in this room, other people. You know, the over-concentration of self. Nobody thinks about themselves here. How many people have been thinking all day? We're used to that noise in our own mind. We think we're comfortable in it. But if you ever had a guest sit in your mind with you for a while, they go, holy shit, 911, 911. So what happens is we're oblivious to our own condition. If you were to take a visual, what that looks like, you ever see somebody in a car wreck? Or movies where people are in a car wreck? Or you ever been in a catastrophe where something happens? Anybody ever experienced shock here? Or see somebody in shock? They're the only ones that don't know the severity of their situation. Right? You have other people. I remember I was working in a movie industry building sets, and this guy cut his thumb off on the saw. He went into shock. He took his thumb and he went to the sink and he was washing it. And I walked out. I said, what are you doing? He says, I need to put this back on. As an observer, I'm going, whoa, whoa. And so what happens is I start treating the shock condition, get him help. Does that kind of make sense? So he can follow through with the medical attention he needs. And that's what happens when we come into the fellowship of AA. We're kind of in shock of what our lives have come to, but we don't fully comprehend what we're up against. Right? We think, a bit of bad luck, the relationship, job, maybe. It's something external. And as soon as I get this fixed, as soon as I get that fixed, as soon as they leave, as soon as recovery. Anybody ever have that? That's not the problem. Right? So a lot of us really don't know what we're up against. We're kind of in shock based on our condition. So when George and these guys try to get me into this big book study, the first time they tried to get me in, they said, hey, Tony, why don't you come into this big book study that we're doing? Right? There's George, Rick, Machine Gun Jerry, these guys. Machine Gun Jerry was the 16th member of Alcoholics Anonymous in Vancouver. He was one of those guys that his legacy will continue for a long time. His love and service in this place was huge. He was not quite right upstairs, but he had a heart this big. I'm not quite right upstairs, but I have a heart this big, right? It's getting us on the right side of crazy. A lot of us are on the wrong side of crazy, and we don't know how to get away from there, right? We're not enjoying crazy. We need to get you to a place where you're enjoying crazy. Because you can't deny it, right, Joe?
That's right.
You need to you need to enjoy yourself, right? So we need to know the story. So as we start going through here, the introduction, they go through the forwards and the preface, they tell us where to find the program, they find us what this is all about, who put it together. And when they start this thing, they talk about, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Are they all in agreement what the problem is, the solution, and what the course of action is?
Yes.
Is it a singular or collective? Collective. So anybody they 12-step, would it be the same experience that they had? Is it the same happening in the fellowship today?
No.
It's becoming singular. My God, my program, my understanding, mine. Well, because you don't understand alcoholism, right? People start saying, God as I understand him. You don't need to explain that. Do you believe or don't believe? How you understand is entirely up to you. But do you understand the solution being presented here? So in the doctor's opinion, it starts off on the first page, and I'll kind of hit the highlights here. He talks about this doctor is the chief physician. He worked in a well-known hospital or treatment center specializing in alcohol and drug addiction. And this was in 1934. And he's giving his observations on people who are afflicted with this illness. He's, as an observer, as a lot of people have been an observer in our lives, with us being afflicted with this illness. They see us like we can't see us. They're more concerned for us than we are. Anybody have people like that in your life? And you wonder what their problem is? This doctor is familiar with our kind of people, because we're the only kind of people that don't really get the severity of it. So he says he witnessed this guy upon his third treatment, not his first treatment, not his second treatment, his third treatment. This guy is relapsing all the time, and he wants to get sober. He wants to have a different experience. And when you go through his story, it's Bill's story. We've seen in the second time in treatment, he would give anything to change his life and make amends and to make right. How many people have been there? Do anything to make right, to change the path, to change the experience that they're having. Bill, one of our founders, was like that. One of the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. If he was coming to AA today, his story would be exactly the same. He'd continue to relapse until he got 12-stepped. Your story is going to be exactly the same until you get 12 steps through this course of action. You need somebody with the collective experience to take you through this, to explain to you the problem as we see it, the solution as we see it, and we have experienced it, and the course of action we took to have this experience. If it was singular, they would say that in step 12. They would say that in the spiritual appendix. And they would talk about the solution is available to all of us, but you need to understand that most people do not understand the solution as laid out by the first 100 men and women. If we did a survey right now, you'd get a lot of people talking about their relationship with God. That's not the solution they talk about in step 2. Most people start talking about their relationship with God in step 2, and that's not what step 2 is about at all. A lot of breaks going on there, right? So, this doctor witnessed this guy acquired some certain ideas that his friend introduced him to. We found out his friend was Ebby, who had a spiritual experience 2 months prior to that. He went and carried this message to Bill. Bill was sitting at the kitchen table drinking. He knew what step 1 was, but he didn't have a solution. So if you don't have a solution sufficient enough to bring about change, what are you going to continue to do? Relapse. How many people has relapsed here? That should tell you you haven't found a solution sufficient enough to create a shift or a change or a different outcome in your life, and that the continuous is still going to happen. What's the promise of step 1? Relapse. 100% relapse. Because if you could stay sober by doing step 1, then step 1 doesn't apply to you. How many people like that step 1? How many people like the other step 1? Just admit it, surrender. You're okay now? Feel better? Oh, yes. I feel good now. Just don't drink. How many people like that solution? I love that solution. Just don't pick up. What happened? I forgot. Forgot what? Not to pick up. How about remind yourself sobriety? There's a conversation.
Yeah.
If that stuff worked, we would change how it works, wouldn't it? Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly reminded himself on a daily basis not to pick up. Just don't pick up, you'll be okay. How many people heard that crock of shit?
Oh.
It's a lie. Or my problem's after I pick up. How many people's heard that lie? Were you sober before you picked up? So, the doctor says he witnesses something here that took place, and to him it was kind of like a phenomenon. And he even allowed this person to start working with other people. So in the doctor's opinion, I'll hit some highlights here. And he talks about here, which most people don't comprehend, and it's talking about Roman numeral XXIX, which is 29. And it just finished talking about, it did not satisfy us to be told we're maladjusted, full-fledged for morality, or downright mental defectives. We all know who that applies to, but not us. Right? What that means is my approach to an illness that I don't understand and the solutions I come up with to fix me that I've never been able to fix me. Your relapse is an indication that whatever you understand isn't going to work. And it's going to happen again. What makes you say it's going to happen again is your past. Your past is an indication what your future is going to look like. And if the meetings were the solution to alcoholism, then step 2 would just say go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And you'll be amazed before you're halfway through. If you went to the airport for 90 days, would you be going anywhere? Would you be meeting people that are going somewhere, that have been somewhere? It'd be exciting. Oh, you went to Cuba? Wow, it sounds great there. And then you get all that information. Wow, and then you go back the next day and you meet people that are going to Cuba and you talk like you've been there. Oh, yeah, I hear it's fantastic. You want to go here, you want to go there, you want to go... You're living on somebody else's experiencing, hoping it's your own. Because if you haven't gone through this course of action, how do you know if you've gone through this or not? If you can't show somebody how to do it, then you haven't got it. It's that simple. Anybody ever take an apprenticeship course here? Who teaches you the apprenticeship? It's somebody with their ticket. They've done it. They could show you how to go through the apprenticeship. Apprenticeship in most cases is 5 years, regardless of what you do. When you go to a mechanic shop, do they have mechanic books specializing in the area? Ford, Chevy, whatever, right? They have books specializing in their vehicles. When you go to the doctor, do they have manuals? When you go to the dentist, they all specialize in their area. They all have a certain language that they all agree on, that they're all able to treat. When you... my daughter's a welder. She talks a certain way. I don't understand a lot of the lingo or the jokes. All the welders do. I'm a carpenter. I have certain lingo and certain understanding. If you've never been around wood, and I said, hey, go grab a 2x6, you'd walk out and look at all the wood and say, what the hell's a 2x6? The difference between a true 2x6 and a milled one, you'd kind of go, what the hell are you talking about? But if you went through the apprenticeship, you'd not understand exactly what I was talking about. If I told you to go get a bucket of compressed steam and bring it back so we could stretch this wood, you would know that I'm pulling your leg. But if you didn't know that, you'd be going to the foreman, hey, that guy over there is looking for a bucket of compressed steam so he can stretch the wood. It's 2 inches too short. You know where I can get that? But it may sound funny, but a lot of us go through recovery that way. We're saying stuff that makes no sense whatsoever because we don't know the basis of it or where it originates from or the surrounding information. And it doesn't have depth and weight. The doctor talked about for these people like us to recreate our lives, the message has to have depth and weight, has to move past the salmon, right? The coho section. The coho swim at the top of the water. The king salmon swim below the coho. You need to get the bait through the coho to get to the king salmon. Most of us never get past the coho section. We get a thought and we get a fish on, and we're reeling that sucker in all day, right? And then when we're done with that thought, we get another thought, another thought. Anybody prone to thinking here? And then you notice when you have a lot of thinking, you're prone to anxiety. Anybody prone to anxiety here? Agitation. And then our favorite escape, anger. Any angry mothers here? Any hair triggers? I'm just like that. No, you're not. Okay. So the doctor talks about this has to have depth and weight. Frothy emotional pill seldom suffices. Our building up of each other, the encouragement of each other and all that stuff, the cheering league and all that other stuff, we're getting chips. We act like it's a reward system instead of a reminder that we're dealing with an illness and the likelihood of you getting another chip is not in your favor. Right? Everybody thinks they're going to stay sober forever here. True or false? Didn't you think that the last time? Isn't that your hope, dreams, and aspirations to have a different life? But something keeps taking you out. We don't know what that is. Because if it was that simple to come here and to be able to achieve sobriety, don't you think we'd hand out plaques instead of chips? Here's your 3-month plaque. Here's your 6-month plaque. What are you doing? I'm bringing them back. Can I get another 24 hours? You know what the most common thing said to newcomers nowadays? What's the most common thing said to newcomers nowadays? No, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Right? So here the doctor talks about we have an internal condition that we're irritable, restless, and discontent. We're just not right. Something just not right in the inside. We see others taking drinks with impunity. What does impunity mean? Without consequence. And we just know there's a solution in that drink. Anybody been there? You just know there's magic in that drink, that the promises come true when I take a drink. Regardless of the consequences. We take a drink again based on the idea that I'm going to find comfort in that drink. Sometimes there's no thinking whatsoever in it. Anybody been there? And they talk about here, which is really cool. They said they are restless, irritable, and discontent unless they again experience a sense of ease and comfort, which comes by taking a few drinks. How many people are capable of having a few drinks here? That's why they say the people we witness having a few drinks, I may start off with a few drinks, like a 6-pack and a Mickey, right? I'll go in for 3, but no more than 4. And then it's last call, and I'll try to get the 3. Anyways. Drinks with they see others taking with impunity. What's impunity? Most of us are here because we have consequence problems. We're not here because of our drinking problem. I have problems. Anybody have problems? I got serious problems. You sit in the meeting the whole hour thinking how you're going to fix something you created. How am I going to fix this? How am I going to fix this? And then you look on the wall to try to figure out what the steps are. Anybody ever try to figure the steps off the wall? You know what they call that? Off the wall sobriety. So, anyways. So they talk about here, why can't we drink with impunity? Or why can't these people drink with impunity? Yeah, these type of people have an allergy or an abnormal reaction to alcohol. So you have to know what a normal reaction is. People I drank with didn't have a normal reaction to alcohol. My wife is a normal drinker. I do not understand her whatsoever. She does strange things. Like she'll leave a wine alone because it doesn't pair with what she's eating, and she'll put the cork back in the bottle. You open a bottle, you finish the bottle. Isn't that the rule? I've opened the fridge once and seen a glass of wine there with cellophane on it. I thought she was messing with me. I said, whoa, come here. I said, you doing this to bother me? She goes, no, I just want to save it for tomorrow. I'm having a certain, fish, and this will pair good with that. I said, you're a problem drinker, aren't you? I don't understand that kind of drink. Right? I don't understand that. Like, I had the privilege over New Year's of putting a piece of cellophane over a wine glass. I've never done that before. There's a first for everything, and I put it away for my wife. I felt really proud of myself. Wanted to take a picture of that moment. Anyways, nuts. So, after they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, how many people has relapsed? So they call it a desire here, but as you go through the book, they'll explain it as a malady. And then they really finish up by calling it a phenomenon, an unexplainable event that happens in people like us. We can't see, feel, and touch it as it's happening. But after we do it, we kind of go, whoa, what am I doing? Anybody ever have that thought? Triggers the phenomenon of craving. I get thirstier, which makes sense to me. Right? And after they have succumbed to the desire against so many, and the phenomenon of craving develops, why do they call it a phenomenon? It's unexplainable. It's hard to explain to people that you get thirsty. Like, I just get thirstier. Like, we're the only group of people that will run back into a building to save a 40-ouncer and leave the cat. Anyways, maybe it's just me. Okay. They pass through a well-known stage of a spree. Anybody need that explained? How many people have been through a spree here? Right? Emerging remorseful. Anybody emerging remorseful? With a firm resolution not to drink again. Any firm resolutions here? And based on your own assessment of you and how you feel in your story, it's unthinkable to have another drink. It's unthinkable. That's why you believe it's going to be different this time. You believe it's going to be different this time based on how you feel, how you think, and your understanding of the situation. You don't understand alcoholism. Right? Because these people, how many people would pass a lie detectors test here? How many people really meant I'd never do it again? How many people remember the pain and agony of the loved ones and the, right? That incomprehensible demoralization, the look on people's faces. How many people got people in your life that don't even say anything to you anymore? They just have that silent hopelessness for you. Anybody? Anybody have the best intentions? Best intentions and come to on the floor with your family looking at you? Or come to on the floor with somebody else's family looking at you? Sorry. Oh, well, maybe it's just me. Okay. This is repeated over and over unless this person can experience an entire psychic change. There's very little hope of his recovery. This is what this is all built on. So what they're saying here is, this is what the truth of it is half of the people in this room is going to die of alcoholism. Half. Half of you, 10 of you won't be here this time next year. 10 of you won't be here this time next year. And you won't, like this guy here. Right? At his memorial, his mom was up there. What could I have done different? His 3-year-old kid, his wife, his brother, his sister, they all got up and they were sharing his story. So what happens is, now when you're here, you're actually working on 2 stories. There's a story you're going to give at your first year cake if you do the work, and there's a story we're going to give at your memorial if you don't do the work. There's only 2 talks that happens here. The one you're going to give and the one we're going to give. And if you think you're exempt from that, then you're not alcoholic. But if you're alcoholic of this type, that is the promise of step 1, to be doomed to an alcoholic death. If you're motivated by that idea, how motivated are you going to be to find a solution to that? Anybody ever been in water and have a near drowning experience? When you know how to tread water and you can touch bottom on shallow end, you're not too panicky, right? You try to make it but when you get to the deep end, and any water above your head is a deep end. Doesn't matter how deep it gets after that, right? Once you submerge and you can't swim, you ever see somebody that can't swim? How panicky are they going to be? Very panicky. Most of us tread water with our illness. Oh, that was close. Got the side. Whoa, that was close. I got the side. What they're saying is, it's going to continue to get worse. What you need is a solution. It's not like learning how to swim, but it's the severity of our situation. If you didn't know how to swim and you got in a boat that was shaky, would you put on a life jacket? That's what they're saying here. If you have this illness, we have a life jacket for you. And if you're willing to wear it or maintain it on a daily basis, the fate that awaits you doesn't have to be the same again. And they talk about here, right, very little hope of his recovery. On the other hand, as strange as this may seem to those that don't understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, is that a very good doomed? Is that kind of something you want on your resume? Doomed. How many people are looking forward to that fate? Doomed. Hooped. Who had so many problems, he desperately of solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only effort necessary being required to follow a few simple rules, which we find is they talk about having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. So when we kind of get through this thing, and you kind of go to page 35, they talk about here is understanding what you're up against. If you're still having the obsession to drink and battling it, you haven't done step 1 yet. If you have still having the obsession to drink, you haven't done step 1 yet. What is that in association with? The idea that somehow, someday, I could control and enjoy my drinking. If I'm obsessed with the idea that there's got to be a way I can do this, or I've been thinking about using all the time, anybody been there? You haven't done step 1 yet. Because if you had done step 1, you would smash the idea that I can't safely use in any form whatsoever. That's the first step requirement, the first conceding that I have this illness, that I can't drink with impunity. For me to drink is to die. I don't fantasize about the idea. When the idea comes of, hey, have a drink, I can't. It'll lead to my demise. It will lead me back to where I've come from. I can't safely drink in any form whatsoever. I've smashed the idea that I cannot drink with impunity, without consequence, because when I drink, I get this thing called the phenomenon of craving. Consequences always happen when I drink, because if you can't control the amount you drink or use, can you control the outcome? And anybody that impaired or that loaded is going to do stupid stuff. That's why they call it impaired. Even normal people who have problems with alcohol do stupid things while drinking. Doesn't mean they're alcoholic, but they're able to stop or moderate what they're doing. Is youth drinking. Anybody ever know people who've done stupid things when they were younger and they don't do that anymore? My 2 girls have done stupid things. They moderate their drinking and they control and enjoy it. I don't understand that. One I have an eye on. I think she may be one of us. So here, I'm hopeful. Okay, so she works in the field of alcoholism. She's a bartender. She says, "I'm getting another one ready for you, Dad." Anyways, so they talk about here on page 35. So we shall describe some of the mental states that precede a relapse into drinking, for obviously this is the crux of the problem. What is the crux of the problem? Before I use or after I use? Before I use, the crux of the problem. Because if I know I can't safely drink, but I keep on drinking, then there's something more fundamentally wrong with me. They said the only solution for the physical part of our ailment is not to drink, is total abstinence, which makes sense. And so people go, "Oh, don't take the first one and you won't get drunk." Right on. How do I not do that? This is saying you won't be able to do that if you're of this type. You'll get 3, 6, 9 months or even a couple of years based on good reason, but there'll come a time and place where you'll be without defense against that first drink again because your illness is lying dormant. It's lying there waiting. It's not in the parking lot doing push-ups. It's lying dormant within the center of your mind. They call it a malady, an illness, an unexplainable event. And so when they talk about here, they talk about suddenly the thought crossed my mind. Bill talked about somebody pushed a drink my way. I took it. Was I crazy? Because he didn't want to drink, but he kept on drinking again. Anybody like that here? Yeah. And we think we make the decision on it. Well, if you made the decision to do something that's been kicking your ass, wouldn't you call that crazy? I'm allergic to pistachios. When I ended up in the hospital last time, they diagnosed that I'm allergic. My throat was closing. They told me about it. I listened with great intensity what the lady was talking about as I was hooked up to IV in emergency. I listened. I didn't hear another sound in the place as she explained my dilemma, my problem, and the solution. I listened to her, how to use EpiPen, how to do all that. I listened with intensity. My situation had my attention. We don't have the same thing with our illness. I don't remember the doctor said there's something not quite right with the way we process information. Right? So now, if I was to end up back in that hospital 3 months later, because I ate some pistachios, and I seen the same nurse, she says, "Didn't you? Were you? Didn't we?" I said, "Yeah, but I got 3 months."
Yeah.
How do you think she would look at me?
See,
That's a little maladjusted, wouldn't it be, to think I did great, I got 3 months, but, she'd be, let's go over this again. I go, okay, now I got a firm resolution not to do it again. I go to Montreal. They have these street vendors happening there. It's snow on the ground. They're roasting them. They don't have the red dye on these ones. It was the red dye. It wasn't, and these are from Brazil. They're not from Africa. And they're heated. All the toxins are taken out of them. I said, sure, I'll have a bag. I eat them, end up in the hospital again. They send my file over and they go, anybody have that long, awkward silence? They look at the file, look at me, look at the file, and I'm smiling. I said, I got 6 months this time. Then they explain it again, and I swear, I've learned I've surrendered. I got acceptance. I mean it this time. I mean it, I mean it. I go to Belize. I got a year now. Feeling good about life. I go back by one of these merchants that's selling ice cream. They have these trophies on the wall for pistachio ice cream. They're having a sale. 2 scoops for the price of 1. It is hot.
It is hot.
It's ice cream. It's ice cream. I grabbed 2 scoops because I like a good deal. I eat the pistachio ice cream, I end up in hospital or treatment or recovery house or back in a facility to save myself from me. It's a subtle form of commitment, by the way. If you need to sign yourself out of society to protect you from you, welcome to the nut house. That's what that is, right? We don't have enough room in No? Well, how many people have had to sign themselves into a facility to save themselves from themselves? I'll be safe here. So I'm in Belize. I've did a nutrition course. I understand myself so well now. So I'm back in the hospital to get my file. Who comes walking through the door? Oh, I'm talking to the nurse, but who comes walking in after the nurse to talk to me? Psychiatrist. Because the problem is now that it's not that I'm allergic to pistachios, it's why do you keep eating them? Isn't it? Like, isn't there stuff? And me trying to explain it away, what kind of look do you think I'd be getting from these people? Well, I got a year this time. Fuck, what? Isn't how many people explain alcoholism the same way? Yeah. I'm doing so well this time. Look what I did last time. My life's so much better this time. We don't understand what we're up against. And so here they talk about this thing that happens in the mind, and they really don't know how to explain it. On page 37, they talk about, we're trying to explain this illness in the best way we know how, where it makes the most sense to all of us who is afflicted with it. Because if you're afflicted with this illness, it really makes no sense why you keep doing it. It really makes no sense. How many times you've been to treatment? How many times you've done this? How many times you're coming back? Why do you keep doing it? How many people would like to know why they keep doing it? 2 of you. Everybody put up their hand before. I don't want to know why. Because if I don't know why, then I won't be disturbed by why I keep doing it. I'm going to tell you anyways. How many people are here right now?
3.
4. That's good. How many people still in Belize with me eating ice cream? Okay. So they talk about this guy puts an ounce of whiskey in his milk, and there's other examples of that. You think, as an observer, this guy's crazy. But anybody observing you relapsing, would they think you're nuts? In spite of what, as an observer watching you, you think, what are you doing? You doing it is 2 scoops. Like, no big deal. So they talk about here, whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity, not the obsession anymore, because I took care of that with the idea that I can't safely drink or use in any form whatsoever, right? Being Alcoholics Anonymous, I can't safely drink. How can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? You may think this is an extreme case. To us is not far-fetched, for this kind of thinking has been characteristic of every single one of us, not some of us, every single one of us. How many people has relapsed here? Put up your hand. That's the characteristic that they're talking about. In spite of your story, your inability to keep you sober based on your experience with you and your illness, you keep doing it again. No matter how much you try, no matter what you do on your own resources, how many times you go to treatment, how many times you do, whatever you do is not going to be enough because you're dealing with an illness and not a behavioral problem. It might be enough for other people, but we don't know for how long. So the good thing about relapsing is it lets you know that I need to do something different to have a different experience. And this is how they explain our illness. And when you understand what you're up against, it will motivate you into the rest of this course of action. They talk about, you may think this is an extreme case. To us, it's not far-fetched. For this kind of thinking has been characteristic of every single one of us. We have sometimes reflected more than Jim did upon the consequences. Anybody here try to think it through? And do it anyways? Anybody play the tape through? That's the problem. You're still playing tapes. No. Or play the story. How many people's played the story through? How many people's tried to think of somebody else's story? If your story is not enough to keep you sober under any and all condition, nobody else's story is. I've never gone, oh my God, I remember what happened to Bill. I better not pick up. If you right, if your story is not good enough to keep you sober under any and all conditions, because we drink under any and all conditions. Our condition is a condition that needs conditioning. How many people drink here under any and all conditions? How many people need a condition to drink? There we go. Here's why. Ah, man. But there was always the curious mental phenomenon that paralleled with our sound reasoning. There invariably ran some insane trivial excuse for taking the first drink. That means there's something that happens in my mind, and when it clicks, it's lying dormant. When it becomes present, I can't see it happening. It's running parallel with my thinking. It means my thinking is shifted and I haven't seen it shift. I'm a part of the logic that it's presenting to me to do what I'm doing. And it happens in the moment. Anybody been there? Yeah. They call this a phenomenon. And the only thing that's going to save us from ourselves is this entire psychic change or spiritual experience. Where they explain that is in the back of the book. It's called the spiritual appendix. When I understand what's being offered here, I kind of go, makes sense that I need to have this change that the doctor talked about, that Bill explained in his story and his experience, and the first 100 men and women's experience. And then they talk about that in We Agnostics. They talk about, if I have this condition, I need to get this vital psychic change or spiritual experience if I'm going to survive this illness. Otherwise, this illness is going to kill me. It's going to kill me, and I'm the only one that don't know it's happening to when it's happening. And then I come to it with a firm resolution not to do it again, but it keeps happening. They're saying here, what my real problem is lack of power. And they explain what they mean by that is access to a shift within inside of myself that creates a change within my thinking sufficient enough where I'm no longer afflicted with alcoholism. I haven't been afflicted with alcoholism in over 30 years now. How many symptoms are there in alcoholism? There's 2. And as long as you have an alcoholic brain, you'll continue to drink. Once you have a psychic change or spiritual experience, do you still have an alcoholic brain? No. That enable you to apply these principles to your real problem, which is you, your human condition. These things that I suffer from is not alcoholism. The lying, cheating, or whatever I'm afflicted with, whatever behavior I have, is not alcoholism. It's my human condition. Why I used to treat with drinking or drugs. Now that this stuff is shifted, now I need to work on what the real problem is practice these principles in all my affairs to find a spiritual solution to my dilemma called me. And as long as I maintain this, I don't have to worry about alcoholism returning. I have a daily reprieve from that. So in 42 years, what's the difference in my story? I have the story of Alcoholics Anonymous. I did what they did as a solution to their dilemma, which I diagnosed myself as having. I had an experienced member take me through this, George, Jerry, and Rick, in a group like this. They took me through it, arguing all the way through it. I did the stupid shit that made no sense. It didn't make any sense. Lo and behold, it worked. Everything I did that made sense didn't work. Kind of weird that way, right? I did this thing. I believed that if I did what they did, I'd get what they got. I did it. It connected me to a power greater than myself that became personal to me. But it's the same understanding that they all had. Lack of power is my dilemma. And then they told me where and how to find this power. I don't have to go searching for it outside of myself. It's within. This power source, this thing that I learned to depend on and rely on, the new guidance in my life is from within. And they showed me how to get access to that. But I had to remove all the blocks. So step 3 is a decision. Do I want the solution or don't I? Step 3 is a decision. If anybody tells you it's anything more than that, they're lying to you. Step 3 is a decision. Because if I could do step 3 and step 3, I wouldn't need to do the rest of the steps, would I? Step 3 says, made a decision to turn my will and life over to the care of God as as we understood. How do I do that? That's what the rest of the steps are for. By the time I get to step 11, it'll show me how to achieve this relationship that will save me from myself. They'll talk about by the time I get to this thing, incorporate, not by the time I get to step 10, by the time I've incorporated these principles in my life, working on my amends, working on these things, working on this relationship that I started to formulate in step 4. I kind of sealed it in step 5. I reconfirmed it in 6 and 7. And then I get to step 10, and they say, now what am I going to do with all this? They said, now we're going to move you into step 11. This whole thing is about step 11. This idea of these maintenance steps, 10, 11, and 12, it's 11. 11 is about your relationship with something greater than yourself. And then when you're in 11, they say, what am I going to do with all this stuff? They say, now we're going to take you into step 12, and you're going to pass this experience on to other people. You're going to recycle it. Having had means it's already acquired. And then when you kind of get to 85, they talk about the transition. It's the moving. It's the moving in ideas here that happens as the result of this course of action. And people miss it because we start teaching it's about the mechanics. It's about doing the steps. It's about working on the steps every day. It's not about the steps. The steps are a vehicle to get us connected to something greater than ourselves that solves our problem. It's about a relationship with a power greater than myself that becomes personal to me. Having had a spiritual awakening, a shift from my thinking into my internal mechanism, this thing that's always talked to me that wanted better for me. I have a personal relationship with Source that's personal to me, and it's the same as all those that went before me. They talked about it in the spiritual appendix. All our members, not some of our members, all our members have tapped into an inner resource of strength. Our more religious members call it a God consciousness. But it's tapping into that power. It's my life force that allows me to live the life that I'm living. This is the message we carry. In order for you to get what I got, you need to do what we did. It's part of the collective. So on page 85, it talks about it is easy to let up on a spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. That means we think it's about feeling better, not getting better. And it's the deceit. Remember, we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, and powerful. Remember, you're dealing with something you can't remember. Remember? You're dealing with a phenomena, an unexplainable event. You can't see, feel, and touch it. It's something that's beyond explanation. Do you suffer from this? Yes. Do you need a solution? So they talk about here, it's easy to let up on a program and rest on our law. We're headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle fault. We're not cured of alcoholism. What we have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. A daily reprieve from what? Alcoholism. You're going to still suffer with you. I've talked to you a few times. How many people still suffer from themselves here? How many people wake up and say, good morning? Let's get started. Right? So, as well, they say, practice these principles. We're willing to grow along spiritual lines. They talk about here, on page 84, sanity, by this time sanity will have returned, which is the whole purpose of this. Then they talk about here, every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. How best can I serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These thoughts must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along these lines all we wish. It is the proper use of will. That means you're in union. It's not about turning your will. I gave God my will. No, it's about a relationship. You need to be involved in how your life looks by incorporating and seeking this power for direction and guidance. Right? So we can exercise our willpower along these lines all we wish. It's the proper use of will. So if you don't know the difference between your will, God's will, spiritual principles, and not what self-based life looks like and what a spiritual base looks like, you're going to be stuck with your thinking. You won't get past the call section. You won't get into the consciousness of this thing that seems to talk to you, that voice that has always been there, that voice that said, hey, what are you doing? There's something different for you. You get in union. I don't know how to explain it, but it's very much a part of me. So then they said it's the proper use of will. So now they're going to show you how to use this thing to incorporate the proper use of will. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him who is all knowledge and power. If We have carefully followed directions. What directions? The previous 84 pages, the doctor's opinion, the forwards, and the spiritual appendix in the back of the book. I have all this information I've incorporated in my life. There's a development happening. So if you're working on your 9, you should be in 11. You should, as soon as you finish your 4 and you've done your 5, you should be right into 11. You should be incorporating this right away. So they said, here, I'll just finish up here. If we've carefully followed direction, we've begun to sense this flow in the Spirit into us. To some extent, we've become God conscious. We've developed this vital sixth sense, but we must go further. That means more action, which is step 11. If you want your whole life to change and you don't want to experience the agony and the pain of your past, then come walk with us. Tuesday and Friday nights, we do people here at 6 o'clock. We have the worksheets here. You can get involved. You could have the story of Alcoholics Anonymous unless you like your own story better. What seems to be the key ingredient to long-term sobriety? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. We have worksheets for those who want to get involved. We got people that can help you go through them, and we need help cleaning the records of our presence, please.